OMG. Okay. Hello, everybody. I don't know what just happened, but my computer literally just shut down on me. So I hope everybody can hear me. Whew, talk about a cortisol rush. Can you guys hear me? Whew, that was a hot moment. Okay. I don't have my glasses, so I can't read your comments. So hopefully, let me see if I
We can hear you, Mindy.
hear me. Thank you. Okay. Let me take a hot moment to pause for here a second. I massively apologize for being a few minutes late for you all. Here's what we're going to dive into today. So I want to go through some logistics, start off with some logistics. And let me make sure, hold on, I have one setting. This will be here for you all to hear me. Hopefully you can hear me better. Okay. So I want to start with some logistics. So the first thing is that there are some amazing PDFs that are being sent to you all. So please make sure you're looking at your email and when you're getting like these replays, because even I was impressed when I increased my volume. Do you guys you're much quieter now. Okay, well, I've never been called quiet before. So, okay, is that better? Can you hear me? Am I okay sound-wise? Somebody tell me. Yes, see a lot of yeses. Okay. So you've been given a lot of really cool PDFs, and please take a look at them, because Hay House has done a phenomenal job just making sure that you guys are getting synthesized information that you can use. So super impressed with that. So please make sure that you're using it, and you can use it as a guide too, that help your patients. So many of you are practitioners. So I was so blown away by it. So there's that. And then what I want to start off with today is I really want to start off with going into the different transitional phases of hormones, because if you look at what I've set up in the information that I've been bringing you this week, I started off really helping you understand the major problems we have right now in women's healthcare. And I really hope you got that and really are thinking deeply about that, because this is really truly where your collaboration with the mission and the more we speak about this, it's like we have to talk about this stuff, is really, really important. Then yesterday, I really wanted to go through some of the fundamental parts of this metabolic switch and really help you see that we have a sugar burner system and we have a fat burning system, and that we're meant to be in both of these systems at different points of our hormonal journey. And one of the reasons that Fast Like a Girl has done so well is because we just haven't had this conversation. Everybody got excited about fasting. They got excited about the results they were getting, but women were suffering once again because we were offering a one-size-fits-all. So yesterday we talked about this metabolic switch and how it actually relates to the normal menstrual cycle. Today, I promised the postmenopausal women that we would chat about this. I want to talk about what is happening to the body as it goes through perimenopause and menopause, and how that relates to the metabolic switch. And then I want to dive into the sugar burner system, and I'm going to be bringing you some of the concepts that are brand new, that are in Eat Like a Girl, that nobody's really heard. You're hearing it now for the first time. So I'm really excited to be bringing that to you as well. So we have a lot to go through. So take notes. I'd love to see in the chat. I can see about 70% of it without my glasses. How many of you are, well, it's funny, how many of you are postmenopausal is really kind of a funny question, because once you're in menopause, you're in menopause. Like, how many of you are menopausal? Yeah, put it in. Keep it going. Awesome. Okay, so a lot of you. Okay, so here we go. Let's go big picture for a hot moment. So when we look at the big picture of a woman's life, the first hormonal transition that happens is puberty. So it's really interesting because one of the things about puberty that I just don't think it's discussed enough is that it is a 10-year process. So those of you that have teenagers, or if you have teenagers in your clinic, understand from the time that the body actually has its first menses to the time in which the brain and the ovaries have got themselves united and are communicating really, really well. That's a 10-year process, 10 years. So this is why, by the way, nutrition is so important for that younger generation, because it's in that 10 years that your hormonal system is starting to communicate well with itself. And the best analogy that I've seen that I really love is this idea that when you start to go out and you walk in the grass, if you're walking in the grass and there's a path that's never been made, the grass is high, and you go walking in it, and slowly, if you walked that path over and over and over again, you would start to kill the grass and create this really smooth pathway that was easy to follow. Okay, the same thing in puberty is happening for those of you that have teenagers. And again, a lot of you have teenagers in your clinic, is that in that 10 years, what's happening is that there's a pathway from the hypothalamus pituitary down to the ovaries where there's massive neurochemical communication going on. And it takes 10 years for this communication to be able to be fully established. So this is why obesogens, like you're going to hear me talk about food a lot today, obesogens are chemicals in our food, endocrine disruptors, are actually starting to adversely affect the brain and the ovaries' ability to talk to itself. So this metabolic switch, massively important, that what I say today about cleaning up the sugar burner system, as a woman starts to get more into early 20s, fasting can become a tool. And so we've got to learn how to teach that generation the power of this metabolic switch, because it's going to really affect her hormonal system. If she gets that metabolic switch wrong in that 10 years, now we have a hormonal problem. And one of the major hormonal problems we have right now for the younger generation is infertility. And we talked a little bit about that yesterday. So if we have any fertility docs or OBs who deal with women with infertility, I want you to go back and I want you to think about, is it possible that those 10 years as the system was starting to form, those 10 years, something, stress, poor food, lack of sleep is a big thing. Something in those years threw the metabolic and hormonal system off. Okay, so that's that time period, major transition. Then the second major transition we have is pregnancy. Oh, one other thing. We talked about this because this is really important that we understand, is that there is a brain change that happens in that 10 years. And I alluded to this conversation that I had with Lisa Mosconi, who is the premier brain researcher, women's brain researcher. She is in the lab doing these studies. And I interviewed her on the Resetter podcast. So if you, it'll come out in a couple weeks, so you can hear the whole episode and you can send it out to your clients, to people. But she talked about how the brain change that happens in that puberty time period is one that goes from relying on another human to live. You basically, like, the survival is going to be minimal. And this is key for when I get to the menopause years. The survival is more difficult until that hormonal piece kicks in and the brain reorganizes itself. I have no idea why the thumbs up. Let's see if we can get this thumbs up thing to happen. So the brain reorganizes itself so that it can stand on its own. Now, and it doesn't need the help of a parent to be able to survive. Now, what's interesting about that brain change, I just want to point out, is that this is where the prefrontal cortex, which is the place where you can set a goal and be able to achieve the goal. It's the place of hope and possibility and creativity. And this part of the brain is developing in those 10 years. Now, I just want to put a side note that the opposition of the prefrontal cortex is your amygdala, which is the middle part of the brain. And the amygdala's job is to keep yourself safe. So when we have traumas, when we have the stress loads that these teenagers are going through, what's happening is it's slowing the development of the prefrontal cortex, because the stress and the traumas are keeping this younger generation locked in their amygdala. And so all they're seeing is like, am I safe? Am I safe? And, social media is like a huge part of that. So, that's a whole nother discussion. So then in pregnancy, we talked about how after pregnancy, there's a massive brain change where we start to lose 30% of our gray matter so that we can grow the part of the brain that is more focused on intuition, so that we can read the cues of our babies who don't have words to talk to us. So our brain senses this hormonal shift, and it says, okay, we are birthing a child, so therefore we need to reorganize ourselves so that we can be the best parent for that child that we possibly can, which is why all of a sudden we can't hold lists of information in our brain. We aren't able to remember phone numbers, and like the memory goes off, because that's not as important as making sure we are in tune with our baby. Fascinating. The brain changes. Okay. So what happens in perimenopause and menopause? And this one is super fascinating. So around 35, your progesterone starts to decline. It is the beginning of the menopausal process. So this is why, by the way, for those 30-year-olds, it's really important that we start teaching them the power of the week before their periods. I called it the nurture phase in Fast Like a Girl, but we have to figure out how to get to the 30-year-olds and be like, hey, that like you got to rest. You gotta recover that week before your period. You've got to eat more carbs. Like otherwise, your progesterone is going to tank sooner than it should. And when I talked about yesterday, the girl gang, that progesterone, she just has a bestie, which, she brings other things, but her major thing she brings is GABA. So now if I've got a 35-year-old who's starting to lose that progesterone, and she's under so much stress, she's eating the wrong foods, all of a sudden now we've got a highly anxious human. And so it sets us up for more of those mental challenges that a lot of people are struggling, a lot of women are struggling with right now. Somewhere around 40, estradiol. So there are 3 forms of estrogen. Estradiol is the most powerful form of estrogen. She is what releases an egg. She also is what stimulates. She brings her girl gang with her. She stimulates serotonin and dopamine and acetylcholine, and oxytocin is her bestie. Like she is the one that is releasing that releases the egg. Estriol is a form of estrogen that actually is more prevalent when we get little bits about it, but we get a lot of it when we're pregnant. And estrone is the estrogen that you're really going to move to when you get into those postmenopausal years. So when you hit around 40, progesterone's doing this, and estradiol's doing this. She's up, she's down, she's up, she's down. So the perimenopausal woman, at some point, she's like, I feel normal, I'm fine. And at other points, she's like, I feel horrible. So this is really the roller coaster that is happening in those perimenopausal years, is because estradiol is just starting to wind down, and sometimes she's up, sometimes she's down. So I can tell you as a curly haired woman, my estradiol often would look like, some days my hair was flat, other days I had an afro. And I'd be like, what is going on during my whole perimenopausal years? And that is really because estradiol is up and down. Estradiol also keeps our skin really plump and glowing. And so some days when you're in those perimenopausal years, you look in the mirror and you're like, okay, I look pretty good today. And then other days you're like, oh my God, I'm aging, because as estradiol went down, she started to tank collagen. And collagen is what keeps our skin plump and looking good. So in this wild roller coaster, anything is possible. This is why sometimes we start to gain weight for no specific reason, because when estradiol goes down, we become more insulin resistant. So those perimenopausal years, we start to pack on weight because we are randomly more insulin resistant as estradiol hits these lows. Hot flashes happen because estradiol is up and then boom, she goes down, and then it triggers the hypothalamus to turn up the heat. So in that time period of those perimenopausal years, it's a wild ride because these neurochemicals are all over the place. So beyond that, the conversation that I really want to point out about this brain change that happens in this time is that I call it a neurochemical armor. It's like a shedding of a neurochemical armor. And we talked about this yesterday, that all of a sudden, all these neurochemicals that both progesterone and estradiol brought with them in a monthly cycle, those neurotransmitters that they brought to the game all of a sudden get diminished. And this is where I could take each one of these neurotransmitters that go away, which I will do in the book that will come out in 2025, and we can look at lifestyle hacks to be able to help dopamine, to be able to help serotonin, to be able to get glutamate and acetylcholine to kick in. Because we don't have estradiol stimulating that anymore, we've got to rely on other hacks. And this is the part of the conversation that is not being had. And we're going to start having it, I promise. But the interesting part about this brain change that happens through these menopausal years, and this was based off my conversation with Lisa Mosconi earlier this week, is that all of a sudden the brain reorganizes itself so that it can land into that post-menopausal years as and this is the way I would say it, and I'll tell you the way Lisa said it, but we land in those post-menopausal years to have a brain that can stand above the community and now be a leader in the community to be able to support the younger generations in the community. It is called the grandmother effect. You can Google it. And there's only about 4 species that go through menopause, who live through menopause. Let's just say it that way. Like, think about that. There's only 4 species, and we're one of them. The whales are another one, that actually live through this menopausal experience. So the brain reorganizes itself so that in the hunter-gatherer days, this is really where we're going to, is that in the hunter-gatherer days, what we were able to do is become an active member of keeping the community alive. Because the women that were of childbearing age back in the hunter-gatherer days were having babies. And so the grandmother, now that she was post-menopause, her brain got reorganized so that she could go and forage for food. So Lisa Mosconi actually says that the post-menopausal brain is the most productive brain, because she's got to hold down the community. She's got to hold down the fort so that she can go and find food, so that the younger woman can stay back and take care of the children, and while the men are out hunting. Now, some of the women went out hunting too. There is a lot of theories on that as well. But the menopausal grandmother, I'm just calling her the grandmother because that's what the hypothesis is, she now became this leader of the cave world, that was making sure there was enough food for the mother that was birthing children, and her job became take care of the kids that were left at home, because the mother wasn't, her brain is focused, think about her purpose, her brain is focused on making sure that she is keeping the youngest child alive. So the postmenopausal brain goes into this place so that the community, the children, can stay alive, because the mama can't keep all the children alive. So the grandma had to come in to keep the other children alive. Think about that for a hot moment. So I tell you all this to say, so when we go into these postmenopausal years, you shouldn't be tossing us aside. You should be asking us what the collective good needs. So this neurochemical armor comes down so that we can operate from both our right and left side of our hemispheres, so that we can take amazing care of the community in the moment that the other women can't do that. So we literally, I said to Lisa, I was like, so are we stepping in to like being a cultural leader? And she's like, that's a really good way of putting it. I never thought of that. So when you go and you look, and we have a great example of this, and it's the Okinawa women. We always hold these Okinawa women up as like, look at what they do in Japan, but we don't do it here in America or in other cultures. I know it's not just an American problem, but we don't look at women postmenopausal as having a superpower for the community. But if you look at what her brain was organized to do, she's the elder that should be leaned into and should be there to hold the community together. And in our world, we toss her aside. So I'm going to change that with the next book. But I tell you all that because what's interesting is that the other brain situation that happens for the postmenopausal brain is that her brain now becomes less glucose sensitive and more fatty acid sensitive. Let me rephrase that. She becomes less sensitive to glucose. She's still sensitive to glucose for her brain to work, but she also becomes more sensitive to ketones. Ketones become a more helpful tool for her. Now, why would that be? And I had so many questions for Lisa, so we only had an hour together. But one of the reasons that could potentially happen is she needed ketones to be able to function at her best when there wasn't food around. That's the whole purpose of the fat burner system, is to make this ketone so that the brain gets supercharged so you'll go find food. So for the postmenopausal woman who's caring for the community, she needs to have full brain power in the absence of food. So her brain is actually wired more to thrive on ketones than any other time of her life. So think about this. This is why postmenopausal women need this metabolic switch more than ever. There's like so many things to unpack in that concept alone. Like the postmenopausal brain has a higher purpose, and it is also so invigorated by ketones because that's how it was designed to be. Isn't that crazy? Like stop and think about all the ways we have misread these hormonal transitions, all the way we have like criticized our hormones. Like think about all of those different ways in which society has failed us, and all the ways when we do not honor these hormonal changes, we turn on ourselves. And I go back to this idea about being gaslit. It's like, and then we walk in to our doctor's office at 48 years old in a whole menopausal chaos brain, but that this brain is rebuilding itself for this leadership moment. And we walk in at 48 and we're like, I'm depressed, I can't focus, I can't sleep, and we're given medication. It's crazy. I mean, I get that it's a patch, but what if you sat, just envision this for a moment. What if you sat in that office and the doctor said to you, just sit tight, your brain's reorganizing itself so it can be the best brain you've ever experienced in your life. And so it's a process. By the way, Lisa Mosconi says it takes up to 6 years after your last period to step fully into this new brain. But imagine if your doctor's on the line, let's start talking like this to our perimenopausal patients. It's like, sit tight. This is hard. We've got a toolbox for you. And in this toolbox, it's here to help you navigate this turbulent moment. But what I have to tell you is where you're going is amazing. Where you're going is to this place where you are going to have the best brain you've ever had. So if you just need to be able to navigate this and know that it's not a useless moment. It's actually working for you. And when I look at the statistics of 45 to 55 being this age in which women commit suicide, I'm like, oh, I wish every single woman could know this. I wish every woman knew that this brain change is magical and it's working for you. Wouldn't that be cool? So there's my big postmenopausal vision. And let's just start to take these transitional moments and bring them to a higher conversation so that women can start to understand this. And again, this is why we need a huge collective community of health professionals talking like this, so that women stop killing themselves and women stop shaming themselves and women stop thinking it's their fault, because they walk into their doctor's offices and they are not getting this conversation, and this is the conversation they need to get. Make sense? Okay. With that in mind, let's go in to this sugar burner system. And you're going to see here that every single concept I'm teaching you links to the next concept. And I hope that it makes it so you never lose this information. I could sit here over 4 days and tell you, eat this, don't eat that, break your fast here, break your fast that. But if you don't understand why, it won't stick in your brain. Unfortunately, you're only going to hold on to about 10% of what I have said over the last couple of days. So we've got to find ways to bring this and stick it into your brain so that you can go out and talk about it. So when we look at these at food and the sugar burner system in Eat Like a Girl, I start the conversation of food on what I call the foundational 5. So a big question that I get all the time is, where do I start with fasting? And my response is, you start with food. If you want to know how to get this metabolic switch to really start to work for you, you got to start with the sugar burner system. Now, a lot of you probably didn't do that, and that's fine. You know, I'll share one of my greatest career moments of my life was a young man that came to me. His name's Todd. I've explained this in many videos, and it's just one of those moments that just tore at my heart and was like just a really cool experience. And he was 300 pounds, and he came to me and he said, I need your help. And I was like, of course. The first thing I looked at him, I'm like, okay, yeah, how can I help you? And so one of the first questions I asked him is, I said, have you tried to lose weight before? And he's like, oh yeah, of course. I've tried so many ways to lose weight. I've just continue to fail. And I was like, well, can you tell me like what you're failing at? And he was like, well, in all honesty, I'm food addicted. Okay, let's just take this concept for a moment. So many of you, I really want to bring compassion back into the food conversation. So many of you are working with clients, patients, people that are food addicted, because that's what the food system has done. The food system has set it up to make you addicted to it. It is spraying chemicals on foods that stimulate your dopamine system in your brain and make it so you crave this food, and it's so unconscious. How many of you are trying to unhook yourself from your phone? Well, guess what? It's hard because this thing is made to make us addicted to it. Well, it's hard to undo yourself from the horrible food that's being poured in, because they've programmed your taste buds so you're now addicted to them. Mix that with the chemicals that are turning our stem cells into fat cells, and you can see that when you have somebody standing in front of you that says, I can't lose weight, I don't want you to translate that into, oh, they must just be undisciplined. They're not undisciplined. They've tried everything, but this damn food system has totally manipulated our neurochemical system. So it's hard to change your food habits. So I asked Todd, when he admitted that he was food addicted, I was like, can you tell me, like, what's the food addiction that you have? And he said, well, I drink 12 sodas a day. And he's like, and I eat at fast food all the time. He's like, full transparency. And I was like, well, thank you for being honest. By the way, another clinical pearl here is when somebody goes vulnerable with you like that, and your brain is like, oh, like my brain went to, holy shit, 12 sodas. Well, dude, this is literally what I didn't say, but my brain went to was like 12 sodas. Like, dude, if you just got off those sodas, like, game over, you would just lose weight and you'd be fine. But he confided in me that he's food addicted. I'm not going to like tell him like, suck it up, dude, get off your sodas. And so I decided that we were going to work with the fat burner system first. Now that was different because this man had a food addiction and I couldn't work on the food system. So stick with me as I connect dots here for you. The other thing I said to Todd, I'm gonna bring this all around, so stay with me here. The third thing I said to Todd was, okay, well, you've failed at diets and you have this food addiction, so there's some mindset hurdles here. So can you tell me why you want to lose weight? And this is huge. This is so huge, because he looked at me and he said, well, I need to stay alive for my family. And I was like, sign me up to help you. If your motivation is to stay alive for your family, like, sign me up. Let's keep you alive. And this why question was so important. Somebody asked yesterday, how do I bring the conversation of fasting to my patients when they're opposed to it? The most important question to ask a patient, a client, someone you're working with to help them make a change is why. Anytime I had a golden rule in my clinic is, if you came in to me and you said, I want to lose weight so that I look good in my skinny jeans, and I couldn't get like, well, what's that gonna, I would ask deeper questions. I would be like, well, what's going to happen when you feel good in your skinny jeans? Like, are you going to feel better about yourself so your relationships will improve? Are you going to perform better at work because you feel more confident? Like, that why became a massive motivator. And if their why wasn't big enough, I didn't take them on as a client. And because I couldn't make the changes I needed to make in order for them to get the result that they wanted to get. And we would just both end up, they'd either blame fasting or they blame me, and we would just end up in a very frustrating place for both the person and me. So always know the why, and it has to be a good why. So what I did with Todd is I was like, okay, his sugar burner system is really messed up. He's never experienced his fat burning system. So how about I just take him over to a fat burning system? So what I did is I asked him if he could start to compress his eating window. I'm like, when you get up in the morning, can you just push your breakfast back by an hour? And I'm very, very transparent. I just say, it's gonna suck. Like sometimes you got to call the heart out because people often will like ride on your enthusiasm and they'll be like, okay, this is going to be easy. I just push breakfast back an hour. Just tell them how hard it's going to be. So when it's easy, they're like, that wasn't that bad. So I told him, push your breakfast back an hour. You may end up in a place where you're cursing me. That's okay. You can say mean things about me in your own head. But we want it to be hard because we need to learn to prime this metabolic switch for you. And then when you open your eating window, when you break your fast, you can eat whatever you want. Eat these horrible foods, drink this horrible soda, eat whatever you want. But each week, I want you to push your breakfast back another hour and another hour. And so that by the time a month has passed, you are eating within a, what do we say, a 9-hour eating window, and you are fasting for 15 hours. And we're not changing your food. I just want you to do that. And I even told him, like, let's set up a time in a month. Let's talk. So I didn't see him for a month. He pops on a Zoom call a month later, just from compressing his horrible food into one eating window. He had lost 13 pounds and he was still drinking 12 sodas a day and going to eating at fast food. So then the next step, I was like, this is amazing. Okay, great. So now, by the way, this is a really important point. What I knew is now we had momentum. And this is something incredibly important for your clients or any of you that are just trying to get forward in your health. You don't need motivation, you need momentum. If you don't have motivation or momentum, motivation dies. So with this poor man who has tried every diet, who is addicted to this toxic food, like we needed momentum, and just getting him to eat it in this time period gave us the momentum that was required. And now he was like, okay, what do I do next? And I was like, well, could you just drink your sodas outside the house? Like just put your sodas at the office and drink it outside the house, but you just have a rule that you can't drink sodas in the house. And he said to me, can I drink Crystal Light? And my toxic brain was like, no, like NutraSweet is a toxin. But I also was like, okay, if I could give him a crutch that he could lean into that didn't have sugar in it, at least we're moving in a little bit of a better direction. So I was like, okay, fine. So second month, all he did is drink his sodas outside of his house, and he lost another 9 pounds. Okay, now we're down 22 pounds, and we haven't even addressed his fast food eating. Buffalo wings and beers were another big issue for him. So the third month, I asked him to bring more protein into his diet. So, and I gave him the rule that I really love, which is 1 gram of protein for every pound of body weight. It's a pretty damn good rule. And it doesn't work for everybody, but it is a really good way to approach protein. So, we had him add protein, or I had him add protein back in. And then that third month, now he's got a compressed eating window. His sodas are outside his house. So he's got, his body's getting this metabolic switch down. He's bringing in protein because protein stabilizes blood sugar. And so now he was down another 12 pounds. So here we are, 3 months in, the guy's down like 30 pounds, and I haven't even addressed the buffalo wings and the beer. And we did this routine for over a year, and I'm so proud. And maybe tomorrow I'll show you the pre and post pictures of him. I am so proud to tell you that in a year's time, he lost 175 pounds. And he was down to his like high school weight. And it was insane. It was insane. I had never seen a body shrink when you gave it this approach. And it was interesting because I saw him in person when he asked for help, and he was over 300 pounds. And then I saw him, so he was like 350 pounds. I mean, he was massively obese. And then I only saw him on Zoom for a handful of times. And then all of a sudden I saw him like a year and a half later, and he and I cried. Like, we literally sat and cried in each other's presence. Like, it was one of the most amazing moments I've ever seen around improving somebody's metabolic switch. And this is the power we have when we educate in this way. So sometimes if somebody's food addicted, you've got to go in through the fasting window. But if they're not food addicted, I like starting with food to prime this metabolic switch. And the foundational 5 food habits that actually applies to both men and women are these 5. So you can write them down. So the first one is that you have to think about blood sugar more than you think about calories. The comment that I made in Eat Like a Girl, the way I phrase it is blood sugar matters, calories don't. Let's go back to Todd. If I had been like, oh, let's start tracking your calories. You want to eat these limited calorie meals. I just would have been another one that put him on a path to failure. But in this first 90 days, we got a blood sugar reader on him. And so that was the beginning of him being able to start to see what his toxic food was doing. It is one of the greatest hacks for food change possible. If your patient has the resources to put a continuous glucose monitor on them, put it on them and tell them, eat whatever you want to eat. I just did this with my 87-year-old dad because we were trying to get his metabolic switch better. And I was like, okay, here you go. Put this on. Now eat. And let's see how your glucose responds. So blood sugar is the most important part when we're looking at this sugar burner system. Okay. Second foundational idea is that we need to get people thinking about eating nature's foods, not human-made food. One of the best things you can do when it comes to food is just look at your plate and say, did nature make this? Or did this go into a lab and humans had to make it? Because nature doesn't necessarily provide foods that keep you dopamine addicted. So it's like a beautiful way beyond macro counting. And I'm really, I know I've written about the different macronutrients, but I got to tell you that I'm really trying to move us away from all this macro counting because people get so rigid with it. So just nature's foods, which are, I mean, in Eat Like a Girl, I hired 2 chefs, and one of the chefs that I hired is a plant-based chef. And when we first started talking, she told me that her passion is that there are 2,300 plants on our earth that are edible. And she's like, I want to figure out how to cook and make delicious meals with all 2,300 versions of these plants. So I was like, that's beautiful. Like, nature has provided us some really cool resources for food. So why don't we focus on nature's food, and instead of looking at our convenience foods, these processed human-made foods? So it's a great hack you can tell your patients, you can use yourself, is that I'm only going to eat what came out of the ground. And this is everything from, the earth provided animals. And I know if we have plant-based people here, this is highly controversial. I'm not trying to, this is not a piece of the conversation I'm going in today, but we do have animals that come from the ecosystem of the earth. And we have plants that come from the ecosystem of the earth. But Cheez-Its, Doritos, there was no ecosystem from the earth in which those foods came from. So let's focus on nature's foods. Another way of saying it is tell your clients or yourself, when you walk into a grocery store, stay away from the middle aisles. Like, go around the outside of the aisles, because that's where all of these nature's foods are. Because nature's foods typically need some refrigeration, because they perish more quickly. Any food that can stay on a shelf forever and ever and ever is either dead food or toxic food. So the shelf life matters. That probably should have been part of one of the foundational 5. Okay, moving on to the third thing. The third one is that this one I love. Feed your microbiome, not your taste buds. Okay, think about this for a hot moment. How many times when we sit down to a meal do we say, what am I in the mood for? And we look at ask our taste buds. Anytime you ask yourself, what am I in the mood for? Your taste buds are like, I'll tell you what you're in the mood for. You're in the mood for that bag of chips that's sitting in your pantry. You're in the mood for sugar. You're in the mood for this. You're now in your dopamine centers. So one of the hacks that I have used over the years has been, what does my body need? I'm now going back to, what does my microbiome need? Your microbiome is one of the most powerful parts of any human body, but especially the female body. And I'm going to explain why here in a second. Those of you that have sugar addictions, or your clients that have sugar addictions, there is an ecosystem within your gut microbes that are slanted more towards the microbes that need sugar. It's one of the most famous microbes in the gut that makes you crave sugar is Candida albicans. And Candida is a fungus. And when that fungus is living in your gut and it starts to take shape, it will tell you that it wants you to eat sugar, drink alcohol, eat more carbs. It's because it has to stay alive. So in order to stay alive, it controls what you eat. It's crazy, right? So same thing with chocolate. Do you know that they have found a microbe that makes you crave chocolate? So you think you're being undisciplined because you can't stick to your diet. There we go. I don't know how to control the thumbs up on this thing. But you think that you're undisciplined, but you didn't realize that the food industry hijacked your dopamine system. So you have to bring that back online, and we'll talk about how you do that in a hot moment. So you think that your dopamine, that it's your problem, but the food industry hijacked your dopamine system, and you didn't realize that those 20 years you were on birth control pill, or those 15 rounds of antibiotics that totally changed the ecosystem in your gut and now has slanted you towards this fungus taking over and controlling your taste buds, that is what needs to change in order for you to change the way the foods that you prefer. By the way, Todd, after a year of doing this metabolic switching and really focusing on his microbiome and eating foods that support a healthy microbiome, he stopped craving all of the toxic food. I'm proud to say he no longer drinks sodas. He is off the fast food like it's insane, because we worked on training his microbiome so that we could retrain his taste buds. Now, the other thing is that your microbiome is massively important for breaking down estrogen. You actually have a set of bacteria in your gut called your estrobolome. And these are bacteria that when you feed them nature's foods, the polyphenol, probiotic, prebiotic foods, it breaks estrogen down so that estrogen is usable to your cells. So those of you that are struggling with menopausal belly weight, those of you that have patients that just can't get their estrogen system in balance despite using HRT or bioidenticals, I really want to come back to this conversation of how important it is to eat fiber foods, eat nuts and seeds, add in spices, eat like a girl. There are so many list after list after list of prebiotic, probiotic, and polyphenol foods, and all of the 100+ recipes are geared towards this estrobolome so that we can bring back the health of the estrobolome so it can finally break estrogen down. So if you're 48 years old and you're making less estrogen, let's at least make sure you're breaking that estrogen down that your body's providing you. That's how important your microbiome is. Okay, number 4 is of the foundational 5 is that protein isn't just for men. Now, this conversation's changing very quickly, but I really want to point out something very interesting, and this ties into the grandmother effect. So when you have more muscle, you have more insulin receptor sites. And when you have more insulin receptor sites, you have more places to put glucose. So building muscle is incredibly important for getting yourself insulin sensitive. The other part of this equation is that protein makes neurotransmitters and hormones. So you need more amino acids to be able to make these. So if we're not, and let me back up one step. There are 2 ways to build muscle: lift weights. Oh my God. Don't know what's going on. You can lift weights, or you can eat more protein. Those are you can do both. Those are the only ways to be able to make protein or to be able to make muscle. This is Mercury in retrograde. Hubby of mine, our dog wants out of my room. If you can come get the dog. But what I want you to understand is that it's massively important that we bring protein back into the conversation. Now, one of the challenges with protein is that what do the plant-based people do? So if you're plant-based, your diversity of plants, you need to be eating lots of different plants. And in the book, I list all the most protein-rich foods. I'll tell you one of them right now are lentils. Lentils are an incredible protein pack. So, but we need to find ways to bring protein back in. The part that ties into the grandmother effect is that they're curious at this moment that there is a rebirth of fitness, a regrowth that can happen in a postmenopausal woman's fitness level. Because remember, with the grandmother effect, she's supposed to go out and help forage for the food close to the cave, to the little community cave. And so she's got to have a fitness level that can get her out. She's also carrying multiple babies around, helping the mom out. So there's a belief that actually we get a bump in fitness when we go into or a potential fitness bump when we go into those postmenopausal years. If you're a postmenopausal woman, you're like, well, that doesn't make sense. That's not what I felt. Then what I want to tell you is maybe you need to bring protein back into the equation, and maybe you need to start to lift more weights because your postmenopausal body is actually demanding it, which is super cool. Okay, last one, and then I'll go to the Q&A is, in this one, I think more people are learning is that fat doesn't make you fat. You need to be adding more good fat in. 50% of your brain resources is fat. So we need to be able to be adding more fats in. What makes you fat, and I'm just going to leave it on this before I go into the Q&A, is what makes you fat is excess. It's a broken metabolic switch. So your body gets so much excess glucose, it is so insulin resistant that it's like, I'm going to go store that excess somewhere else. And I'm going to put it as fat around your belly and around your arms, in your booty and your hips, because it's better for your survival if I put fat there as opposed to your cardiovascular system. It also, fat is storage for toxins, fat is storage for estrogen and hormones that your body can't break down. And then we look in the damn mirror at our fat and we go, oh my God, something's wrong with me. But your body put your fat in this location to save your life. So it wasn't because you ate a high fat diet, you weren't on a low fat diet. It was because you were insulin resistant, you were exposed to extra toxins, and your estrobolome was so messed up that you weren't able to break down estrogen. So your amazing, brilliant body was like, let me store it around your belly. And then you look in the mirror and get mad at yourself. And your body's like, what? Like, I was trying to save your life. If it could talk to you. Make sense? So a lot in what I just said, and put it in the chat. Like, I hope your mind is blown by this, because this is the way we need to start to repattern the discussion around fasting, around food, around hormones. We need to like elevate the conversation, because without this knowledge, women are killing themselves and they're getting gaslit. That's how important this knowledge is. Okay. With that in mind, oh God, okay, let's see if I can read this. Okay, is the brain fog in the menopausal woman experience there to reorganize the brain to function as a leader, similar to the grandmother? Yeah, I don't know anything about elephants, but I would definitely say, I mean, the thing is that Lisa said there's only 4 species. The whales are one of them. So the whales do this. There we go. I'm entertaining myself now. The whales do this. So it is similar to these other 4. But yeah, you just Google the grandmother effect and you'll see that they definitely do it. The whales do. Okay. How can we support the brain power as an older woman and avoid Alzheimer's and dementia? Okay, great question. So I will tell you, the first thing is that you need to get used to making ketones, because your brain is more sensitive to ketones. It is ready to use ketones as a fuel source. It is built itself to use ketones as a resource. So make sure that that you're getting ketones, and then follow the foundational 5. That would be another one. What about medications? That's okay. What about medications for mental illness and anxiety? How do you feel? And why do you need to? Okay, wait. What about medications for? And how do you modify the fasting reset? I'm not quite sure this question, but let's talk about mental illness and anxiety. How about we go with that path? It's a complex issue, mental illness and anxiety. There are a lot of reasons why somebody has anxiety and depression. And I think, just like I'm asking that we take a multi-therapeutic approach to a woman's health, I think we need to take a multi-therapeutic approach to mental illness. And a big part of that needs to be this metabolic switch. So I'll share with you something that I shared with my academy yesterday on a call that we did. I am really keenly aware right now that one of the challenges that's showing up for us mentally and the way our emotions are run is that there's a dysregulation of 4 major systems. So we have a metabolic dysregulation. So people don't know, they don't know how to do this. So they haven't cleaned up that metabolic switch. We have a massive dysregulation of the nervous system. Our nervous system I'm sorry. This is just really fun because I don't know what's going to appear behind us. So, but yeah, balloons. I'll take balloons. Okay, so our nervous system is meant to go into rest and digest, and into fight or flight, and then back into rest and digest and into fight or flight. But because so many of us are under such chronic stress, we've gone into a new nervous system, which is called our freeze nervous system. And this is the system that really gets out of whack, and now we can't relax. And if we can't relax, that anxiety starts to go through the roof. Third system is the microbial system. I've already talked about that. We have people that have been on multiple rounds of antibiotics. They've been eating toxic food. If it's a woman, she's been on birth control for 20 years. Her microbial system is so off. And when those three systems start to get dysregulated, the hormonal system becomes dysregulated. And when the hormonal system becomes dysregulated, now the emotional system is dysregulated. So the way that I look at mental illness and anxiety is that we've got to bring coherence back into primarily these three systems: the metabolic system, the microbial system, and the nervous system. That is lifestyle. That is all lifestyle right there. What I've been teaching you with Fast Like a Girl and Eat Like a Girl is how do you balance, use these two states to balance the metabolic system and the microbial system and the nervous system to some extent, because we're talking about resting and relaxing. But we've got to really look at the mental changes that are happening from a bigger vision. And now we've got the hormonal changes that are happening through this pruning of the brain. So if you're confused, it's because your brain is used to this is the problem, this is the answer. That is how our healthcare system is set up. And so what I'm trying to do is take us out of that conversation and put us into the conversation of, how is my body designed? How can I line my lifestyle up with the design of my feminine body? And that's the conversation that we need to start with. So I hope that helps. You are really getting the authentic me today. I apologize for being late. I hope I delivered some good knowledge for you. Tomorrow, we are going to go deeper into all of this because it fascinates me. I promise I will show up on time. I'll have my computer ready and ready to go. And then we'll be talking about how you can take these teachings and go deeper with me, how we can come together as a community and we can start to educate each one of us so we become that community leader that the world so desperately needs. So tomorrow, I'm going to go through all of that. So I'm going to go reset my nervous system after the experience this morning, but just massive appreciation for all of you. And tomorrow I'll be a better version of myself. So peace out.